Hey y'all, Sondley Hamrick, just checking in once again before this long compilation video. I would appreciate if you did the like, comment, subscribe, bell icon thing with YouTube. Um, Once again, with these compilation videos, I don't plan to monetize them, um, and I still haven't decided on if I'll monetize the single chapter videos, but these will never have ads on them. I won't put ads on them. Just so people can listen all the way through without getting, blasted by some uh, advertisement for shoes or something. I don't know. But yeah, that's about
This
it.
is my
I've had a great time recording this so far, even though we're only a fifth of the way through. Shout out to Takato in my comment section, just kind of keeping me motivated to keep posting these. And yeah, that's about it. I do plan on attempting the other three great Chinese literatures, so we'll see how I feel at the end of Journey to the West, but that's the loose plan for now. Anyway, enjoy. Chapter 11. After touring the underworld, Taizong returns to life. By presenting a pumpkin, Louis Quan continues his marriage. 100 years flow by like water. A lifetime's career is no more than a bubble. The face that yesterday was the color of peach blossom, today is edged with snow. When the white ant's line of battle collapses, all is illusion. Repent, repent, is the cuckoo's call. He who does good in secret can always prolong his life. Heaven looks after the one who asks no pity. Taizong was in a daze as his soul went straight to the Tower of Five Phoenixes, in front of which he saw the horsemen of the Imperial Guard who invited him out hunting with them. Taizong was glad to go, and they went off into the distance. But after they had been going for some time, he found himself walking alone in a wasteland. The horsemen had all disappeared. Just as he was discovering to his alarm that he could not find his way, a man appeared not far away, shouting, "Great Emperor Tang, come here, come here!" On hearing this, Taizong looked up and saw him. A black silk turban, a rhinoceros horn belt. The black silk turban has tabs blowing in the breeze. The rhinoceros horn belt has golden mountings. In his hands an ivory tablet, glowing auspiciously. His thin silk gown conceals his divine light. He wears a pair of boots with whitened soles. As he climbs the clouds and grasps the mist, holding to his chest the registers of life and death, noting down the quick and the dead. His tangled hair blows about his ears. His whiskers dance and fly beside his cheeks. Once he used to be a Tang minister, but now he judges cases for the King of Hell. When Taizong went up to him, he fell on his knees beside the path and said, "Your Majesty, please forgive your subject for his crime of failing to come far enough to meet you." "Who are you?" asked the Emperor, "and why have you come to meet me?" "A fortnight ago your humble servant heard the Dragon King of the River Jing bringing a case against your Majesty in the Sinluo Palace because he was executed despite your promise to save him," replied the other. "The King of Qinyang, of the first palace sent devil messengers with an urgent summons to your majesty to be present when the case is heard between the three orders: the human order, the underworld order, and the water order. When I heard this, I came here to meet your majesty. I arrived late, so I beg your forgiveness." "What is your name and position?" asked Taizong. "When your humble servant was alive, I used to serve his late majesty. I was magistrate of Xizhou, and later made vice president of the Ministry of Rights. My name is Kui Zhu. I have now been given office in the underworld as the judge in charge of cases at Fangdu." Taizong, greatly delighted to learn this, went up to him and supported him with his imperial hands and said, "Sir, you have made a long and exhausting journey. Wei Jing, our minister, gave us a letter for you. How lucky that we have met." The judge thanked him and asked where the letter was. Taizong produced it from his sleeve and handed it over to Kui Zhu, who received it with a bow. When he opened it, he saw that it read as follows: "Your Excellency, Metropolitan Judge, and Venerable Elder Brother Kui. Remembering our former friendship, I still see and hear you as if you were alive. But many years have now flown by since I last received your pure instruction. On feast days, I set out some vegetarian dishes as a sacrifice to you, but I have been unable to divine whether they are enjoyed by you. As I have the good fortune not to have been abandoned by you, and you have appeared to me in dreams, I now know that my great elder brother has risen high. But alas, there is a great gap between the worlds of darkness and of light, and we are unable to meet each other, as we are each at different ends of the universe. As the cultured Emperor Taizong has recently passed away of a sudden illness, it seems likely that his case will be discussed by the three orders, so that he is bound to meet you, elder brother. I beseech you to remember the friendship of the days when you were alive and give His Majesty such assistance as will enable him to return to the sunlight. This would be a great favor, and I shall write again to thank you. I cannot go into all the details of the case here. Your younger brother kowtows to you. With affection, Wei Jing." The judge was very pleased when he had read the letter. "I know about how the official of Wei, of the personal department, beheaded the dragon in a dream the other day," he said. "And this news filled me with great admiration. He's always looked after my sons and grandsons, and now that I have a letter from him, your Majesty need have no worries. Your humble servant can undertake to escort your Majesty back to the light, where you will once more ascend the throne." Taizong thanked him. As they were talking, a pair of servant boys in the black appeared, carrying banners and a precious canopy. "An invitation from King Yama," they shouted. Taizong and Judge Kui went along with them. A city wall appeared in front of them, and above its gates hung a large tablet on which was written, "Devil Gate of the World of Darkness," in huge letters of gold. The two lictors waved their banners and led Taizong into the city and along its streets. Beside the road he saw his father and predecessor, Li Yuan, as well as his dead brothers, Zhen Sheng and Wan Ji, who went up to him and said, "Shimin's here Shimon's here, using his personal name. They grabbed and hit him, demanding their lives back. And as Taizong could not avoid them, they held him fast until Judge Kui ordered a blue-faced devil with terrible fangs to drive them away. Only then was Taizong able to escape from their clutches. After another mile or so, he saw a green-tiled tower rising majestically before him. A myriad colored veils of haze drifting about it. 1,000 wisps of red mist dimly appearing. The flying eaves had monsters at their ends. The matching tiles of the 5 roofs were gleaming bright. Rows of golden studs were driven into the doors. A length of whitest jade was placed across each threshold. When the windows faced the light, they glowed like the dawn. Red lightning flashed from the lattice and the blinds. The tower soared into the azure sky, while porticos led to sumptuous courtyards. Incense from braziers, shaped like breasts, perfumed the royal robes. The light from lanterns of purple gauze was thrown on palace fans. To the left, a row of ferocious bull-headed demons. To the right were terrible horse-faced devils. Those who escorted the spirits of the dead had golden tablets. Those who summoned souls wore white sackcloth. This place was called the Assembly of the Underworld, the Palace of Yama, King of Hell. As Taizong gazed at it from the outside, jade ornaments could be heard tinkling as they swung from the belts of officials, and rare perfumes could be smelt. In front were 2 pairs of attendants holding lanterns, and behind them, the 10 generations of kings of the underworld came down the steps. The 10 kings were the king of Qingwang, the king of Shujiang, King Songdi, King Wuguan, King Yama, King Impartial, King of Mount Tai, the Metropolitan King, the King of Bianchang, and the King of the Ever-Turning Wheel. They came out of the Senluo Palace and bowed to Taizong in greeting. Taizong felt too humbled to go forward. Your Majesty is a monarch in the world of light, but we are only kings in the world of darkness. It is therefore only right that we should do this. So why this excessive modesty? We have offended against your majesties, replied Taizong. So how can we venture to talk in terms of light and darkness, or men and ghosts? After much yielding, Taizong went into the Senluo Palace, and when they had finished bowing to each other, they sat down as hosts and guest. A moment later, the king of Qingwang clasped his hands together and said, Why is it that the ghost dragon of the river Jing has brought a case against your majesty, saying that he was executed despite your promise to save him? I had a dream that an old dragon came to ask me to save him, replied Taizong. And I did in fact promise that he would come to no harm. But as it turned out, his crime was a capital one, for which he was due to be beheaded by the minister in the personnel department, Wei Zheng. We summoned Wei Zheng to come and play chess in the palace, and I never knew that he had beheaded the dragon in a dream. This happened because that officer can come and go miraculously, and also because the Dragon King had committed a crime for which he deserved to die. We were in no way to blame for his death. When the 10 kings heard his statement, they bowed and replied, Even before that dragon was born, it was written in the registers of the Southern Pole Star that he was destined to die at the hands of a personnel minister, as we have long been aware. But because he has been arguing about the matter, we had to send for your majesty. When the case has been argued between the three orders, we shall send him to the revolving prayer wheel for reincarnation. We hope that your majesty will forgive us for forcing you to attend. Then they ordered the judge in charge of the registers of birth and death to fetch them at once to see how long his majesty was due to live. Judge Qui hurried to his office and took down the general register of the lengths of the reigns heaven had allowed to the kings of all countries of the earth. As he was looking through it, he saw to his horror that Emperor Taizong of the Great Tang in the southern Jambu continent was due to die in year 13 of his reign. He hurriedly seized a large brush, soaked in ink, changed 13 into 33, then handed the register up. The 10 kings started at the beginning and read it through until they saw Taizong was due to reign for 33 years. "How long has your majesty been on the throne?" asked the shocked kings of hell. "It is now 13 years since my accession," Taizong replied. "Then there is no need for your majesty to worry," said King Yama. "You have 20 years of life ahead of you. Now that you have answered these charges satisfactorily, will you please return to the world of light?" On hearing this, Taizong bowed and thanked the 10 kings, who then ordered Judge Qui and Marshal Zhu to return Taizong his soul. As he was leaving the Senluo Palace, Taizong raised his hand in salutation and asked the 10 kings about the prospects for all the members of his family in the palace. "Good," they replied, "except that your majesty's younger sister does not seem to be going to live much longer." Taizong bowed once more to express his thanks. "When we return to the daylight, we shall have nothing with which to show our gratitude, except for fruit and melons. We have gourds, eastern melons, and western melons, or watermelons here, but no pumpkins, no southern melons," said the 10 kings. "When we return to the world of the living, we shall send some," replied Taizong, and with that they raised their clasped hands to each other, bowed, and parted. The marshal, with the soul-guiding flag in his hand, led the way, and Judge Qui followed with Taizong as they left the Office of Darkness. Taizong looked up and saw that they were not going the same way as they had come. "Have we taken the wrong road?" he asked the judge, who replied, "No. In the underworld you can only go. You can never come back. We are now taking your majesty out through the revolving prayer wheel. Thus you will be able to tour the underworld on your way back to life." Taizong had no choice but to follow them as they led the way. After a mile or two, he saw a high mountain wrapped in dark clouds down to its foot, while a black mist blotted out the sky. "What's that mountain over there, Mr. Qui?" he asked, and the judge replied, "That is the dark mountain of the underworld." "However shall we cross it?" Taizong asked in terror. "Have no fears, your majesty. Your subjects will lead the way," answered the judge. Taizong followed them, shivering and trembling, and when they had climbed the mountain he looked around him. He saw that it was jagged, precipitous, high as the Sichuan ranges, lofty as Lushan. It is not a famous peak of the world of light, but a crag of the underworld. Ogres hidden in the clumps of thorns. Evil monsters lurk behind the cliffs. Your ears hear no calls of animals or birds. The eyes can only see fiends. A dark wind howls as black fog spreads. The dark wind that howls is the smoke breathed from the mouths of magic soldiers. The spreading black fog is the vapor belched out by hidden trolls. Wherever you look, the prospect is appalling. All you can see to left or right is unbridled evil. To be sure, there are hills, peaks, ranges, caves, and gullies. But no grass grows on the hills. There is no sky for the peaks to touch. No travelers cross the ranges. The caves hold no clouds. No water runs in the gullies. Before the cliffs, there are only goblins. Below the ranges are trolls. Savage ghosts shelter in the caves. Evil spirits hide in the gullies. All around the mountain, ox-headed and horse-faced demons howl and roar. Half hidden from view, hungry ghosts and desperate spirits sob to each other. The judge who claims men's lives cannot wait to deliver the letter. The marshal who chases souls shouts and roars as he hastens along with his documents. The swift-footed ones swirl along like a tornado. The catchers of souls stand as thick as clouds. Thanks entirely to the protection of the judge, Taizong crossed the dark mountain. As they continued on their way, they went past very many courts, and from each of them, piteous sounds assailed his ear, while the evil ghosts there struck terror into his heart. "What place is this?" asked Taizong. "It is the 18 layers of hell that lie behind the dark mountain," the judge replied. "What are the 18 layers?" asked Taizong. "Listen, and I will tell you," the judge replied. "The hanging by the sinews hell, the hell of injustice, and the hell of the pit of fire. Loneliness and desolation, misery and suffering. All those here committed the 1,000 lower sins, and were sent here for punishment after death. The Fengdu hell, the tongue extraction hell, the flaying hell, howling and wailing, terrible anguish. They offended against heaven by not being loyal or filial. They have Buddha mouths but snake hearts, so fell down here. The grinding hell, the pounding hell, the hell of drawing and quartering. Skin and flesh ripped and torn, lips rubbed away till the teeth show. In the blindness of their hearts they did evil things, and all their fine words they harmed others in secret. The ice hell, the skin-shedding hell, the disemboweling hell, filthy faces and matted hair, frowning foreheads and sad eyes. They all used false measures to cheat the foolish, thus piling up disasters for themselves. The oil cauldron hell, the hell of blackness, the hell of the mountain of knives. Shivering and trembling in terrible agony, because they used violence against the good. They cower and hunch their shoulders in their suffering. The hell of the pool of blood, the Avicii hell, the hell of the steel-yard beam, where skin is pulled away from the bone, arms are broken and tendons cut, because they killed for gain, butchering living creatures. They fell into these torments that will not end in 1,000 years. They will always lie here, never to escape. Every one of them is tightly bound, knotted, and roped. Red-faced demons and black-faced demons are sent with their long halberds and short swords. Ox-headed fiends and horse-faced fiends, with iron clubs and brazen hammers, beat them till their wincing faces flow with blood, as they call on heaven and earth and get no answer. Let no man alive have any illusions. The devils carry out their orders and release nobody. Good and evil will always be rewarded. It is only a question of time. Before they had gone much further, a group of devil soldiers holding banners knelt down beside the road and said, "The commissioners of the bridges welcome you." The judge shouted to them that they were to rise and led Taizong across a golden bridge. Taizong saw that there was a silver bridge beside it, over which some loyal, filial, worthy, just, and upright people were passing, led by banners. There was a third bridge on the other side, with an icy wind roaring across it, and waves of blood boiling below, amid unbroken howls and wails. "What is that bridge called?" Taizong asked. And the judge replied, "Your Majesty, that is called the Bridge of Punishment, and you must tell people about it when you return to the world of the living. Below the bridge there are a narrow, precipitous path over a mighty, rushing river. It is like a strip of cloth across the Yangtze, or a fiery pit rising up to heaven. The icy vapors freeze one to the bone. Nauseating stenches assail the nostrils. There is no boat to ferry you across the crashing waves. All who appear are sinful ghosts with bare feet and matted hair. The bridge is many miles long and only 3 fingers wide. The drop is 100 feet. The waters are infinitely deeper. Above there are no railings for support, while trolls snatch their victims from below. In kangaroos and bonds, they are driven along the dangerous path by the river of punishment. See the ferocity of the divine generals by the bridge. Watch how the ghosts of the wicked suffer in the river. On the branching trees hang silken clothes in blue, red, yellow, and purple. In front of the precipice squat lewd and shameless women who swore at their parents-in-law. Copper snakes and iron dogs feast on them at will, as they constantly fall into the river, never to escape. There is a poem that goes, "As ghosts wail and spirits howl, the waves of blood tower high. Countless ghouls with heads of bulls and horses guard the bridge with great ferocity." The commissioners of the bridges had gone away while he was speaking. Taizong's heart was once more filled with horror as he nodded his head and sighed silently in his distress, then followed the judge and the marshal. Before long they had crossed the evil river of punishment and passed the terrors of the bowl of blood. Then they came to the city of the unjustly slain. Amid the hubbub, shouts of "Li Shimen's here! Li Shimen's here!" could be made out, to the terror of Taizong. He saw that his way was blocked by a crowd of maimed and headless specters. "Give us back our lives!" they were all shouting. "Give us back our lives!" The panic-stricken Taizong tried to hide, yelling, "Help, Judge Kui! Help! Help!" "Your Majesty," the judge replied, "these are the ghosts of the kings and chieftains of the 64 groups of rebels and the 72 troops of bandits. They were all killed unjustly, and nobody has given them a home or looked after them. They cannot get themselves reborn as they have no money for the journey, so they are all uncared for, cold and hungry ghosts. If your Majesty is able to give them some money, I can save you." "I came here empty-handed," Taizong replied, "so where could I possibly get any money?" "Your Majesty," the judge replied, "there is a man in the world of light who deposited a certain amount of money in the underworld. If your Majesty is prepared to sign an IOU, I will endorse it, and we can borrow his store of money to distribute among these hungry ghosts. Then we will be able to continue on our way." "Who is this man?" asked Taizong. "He is a man of Kaifeng in Henan," the judge replied, "and his name is Jiang Liang. He has 13 hoards of gold and silver down here, and if your Majesty borrows them, all you have to do is repay them when you return to the world of light." Taizong was very pleased and only too eager to borrow one. He signed an IOU at once and gave it to the judge, then borrowed a store, which he gave to the marshal to hand out. "You are to share out this gold and silver, and let your lord of the great Tang pass," said the judge. "As it is too early in his life, I am under orders from the 10 kings to return his soul, and tell him to hold a great mass when he is back in the world of light, to enable all of you to be reborn. So don't be making any more trouble." When the ghosts heard what he had to say, and they were given gold and silver, they all withdrew, murmuring their obedient assent. The judge then told the marshal to wave his soul-leading flag, and Taizong was taken out of the city of the unjustly slain, and floated along the highway to the daylight. After they had been going for a long time, they reached the wheel of the 6 paths of being. Some people were soaring in the clouds, wearing cloaks of rosy mist. Others were being given office with golden insignia to hang from their waists. Monks and nuns, clergy and lay people, beasts of the field and birds of the air, ghosts and devils, all were pouring under the wheel, and each was going along his allotted path. "What's this all about?" asked the Tang Emperor. "Your Majesty is a man of deep understanding," the judge replied. "You must be sure to remember all this, and tell the living about it. It is called the Wheel of the 6 Paths of Being. Those who have done good deeds rise on the path of the immortals. Those who have been loyal are reborn on the path of honor. Those who have done their duty to their parents lead their next life on the path of happiness. Those who have been just return to life on the path of man. Those who have accumulated merit are reborn on the path of wealth. and the evildoers fall down into the path of devils. On hearing this, the Tang Emperor nodded and said with a sigh, "Excellent. Truly excellent. The virtuous come to no harm. The good heart is always mindful. The way of goodness always lies open. Do not allow evil thoughts to arise. Thus you will avoid all trouble. Say not that there is no retribution. Whether you become a god or a ghost is all determined." The judge took Taizong straight to the gate of rebirth on the path of honor, bowed to him, and said, "Your Majesty, this is the way out, where I shall have to take my leave and go back. Marshal Zhu will escort you for the next stage of your journey." "I have made you come an awfully long way, sir," said the Tang Emperor as he thanked him. "When your Majesty returns to the world of the living, you absolutely must hold a great mass to enable those forlorn ghosts to be reborn," replied the judge. "Don't on any count forget, as there can only be peace on earth if there are no vengeance-seeking ghosts in the underworld. Every single wrong will have to be corrected. Teach all people to be good, and then you will be able to assure the continuity of your line and the eternal security of your empire." The Tang Emperor agreed to each of his proposals and took leave of him, then went through the gates with Marshal Zhu. Seeing a fine horse standing ready and saddled inside the gates, the marshal asked Taizong to mount it with the help of his assistants. The horse was as swift as an arrow, and it was soon at the banks of the river Wei, where a pair of golden carp could be seen sporting in the water. Taizong, captivated at the sight, pulled in his horse's reins and gazed at them. "Your Majesty," the marshal said, "please keep moving. We have to enter the city early." But all the Tang Emperor wanted to do was look. As he would not move on, the marshal grabbed him by the feet and shouted, "Get moving! What are you waiting for?" As he pushed him off his horse and into the river Wei with a splash. Taizong was now free of the underworld and back in the world of the living. The civil and military officials of the Tang court, Zhu Maogong, Qin Shubao, Yuqi Jingde, Duan Zhizhang, Ma Sanbao, Cheng Yaojin, Gao Shilian, Li Shiji, Feng Zuanling, Du Rui, Xiao Yu, Fu Yi, Zhang Daoyan, Zhang Shiyang, Wang Gui, and the others, as well as the empresses, imperial consorts, and concubines, and pages, were all in the White Tiger Hall. They were discussing whether to issue an edict of mourning to inform the world so that their heir could be put on the throne. Wei Zheng was saying, "Gentlemen, stop this discussion. We must not do that. If the country is alarmed, anything might happen. If we wait for another day, our master is bound to come back to life." Zhu Jingzong stepped forward from the lower ranks and protested, "Minister Wei is talking nonsense. As the old saying goes, split water can't be picked up, and the dead can't come back to life. What business have you to be spreading confusion with these groundless claims?" "Mr. Zhu," Wei Zheng replied, "I can say truthfully that I have been given instruction in the magic arts since childhood, and my predictions are extremely accurate. I can assure you that I have saved His Majesty from death." As they were arguing, they heard loud shouts of, "You're drowning me! You're drowning me!" coming from the coffin. The civil officials and the generals were struck with terror. The empresses and consorts shivered. Every one of them had a face as yellow as a mulberry leaf after autumn, a waist as weak as a willow sapling before spring. The air went weak at the knees as he stood in full mourning, unable to hold up his staff. The attendants' souls flew away. How would it do for them to be wearing mourning hats and clothes? The consorts and concubines collapsed. The palace beauties had to lie down. When the consorts and concubines collapsed, it was like a gale blowing down withered lotuses. When the palace beauties laid down, it was like a rainstorm beating young lotuses down. All the ministers were terrified, and their limbs went numb. They shivered and shook, struck dumb and stupid. The White Tiger Hall was like a bridge collapsing, and the confusion round the coffin was like a temple falling down. All the palace women fled, as not one of them dared to approach the imperial coffin. Luckily, the upright Zhu Maogong, the trusty Wei Zheng, and the brave Qin Shubao, and the ferocious Yuji Jingde went forward to put their hands on the coffin and shouted, "What is it that worries your majesty and makes you speak to us? Tell us and do not haunt us and scare the royal family." "His Majesty is not haunting us," Wei Zheng said. "His Majesty has come back to life. Bring tools at once." They opened the coffin and found Taizong sitting up inside and still shouting, "You're drowning me! Save me, someone!" Zhu Maogong and the others helped him to his feet and said, "There is nothing to fear as you come round, your majesty. We are all here to protect you." The Tang Emperor then opened his eyes and said, "We have been having an awful time. After escaping from the evil demons of the underworld, we were drowned." "Relax, your majesty. There is nothing to fear." "How could you have drowned?" the minister said. "We were riding along the banks of the river Wei and watching to fishes playing, when that deceitful Marshal Zhu pushed us off the horse and made us fall into the river, where we all but drowned." "Your majesty still has something of the ghost about you," said Wei Zheng, and he ordered the Imperial Medical Academy to send medicinal potions to settle the spirit and calm the soul at once. He also sent for some thin gruel. After 1 or 2 doses of the medicine, the emperor returned to normal and regained full consciousness. The Tang Emperor had been dead for 3 days and nights before returning to rule the world of the living once more. There is a poem to prove it. Since ancient times there have been changes of power. Dynasties have always waxed and waned. What deed of the kings of old could compare with the Emperor of Tang returning to life? As it was evening by then, the ministers asked the emperor to go to bed, and they all dispersed. The next day they all took off their mourning garments and put colorful clothes back on, wearing red robes and black hats, and with their golden seals of office hanging from purple ribbons at their waists. They stood outside the gates of the court awaiting the summons. As for Taizong, after taking the medicine to settle his spirit and calm his soul, and drinking some thin gruel, he was helped to his bedroom by his ministers. He slept soundly all night, building up his energies, and at dawn he rose. See how he was arrayed as he summoned up his authority. On his head, a hat that thrust into the sky. On his body, a dark yellow robe, girt with a belt of Lancian jade. On his feet, a pair of shoes of success. The dignity of his bearing surpasses all others at court. His awesome majesty is today restored. What a peaceful and wise great Tang emperor, the king named Li, who can die and rise again. The Tang emperor entered the throne hall, and when the two groups of civil and military officials had finished acclaiming him, they divided into sections according to their ranks. When they heard the decree, "Let all those with business step forward from their sections and submit memorials, and let those with no business retire," Zhu Maogong, Wei Zheng, Wang Gui, Du Rui, Feng Zuanling, Yuan Tingyang, Li Chunfeng, Zhu Jingzong, and others stepped forward on the eastern side. And on the western side, Yin Kaishan, Liu Hongji, Ma Sanbao, Duan Zhizheng, Cheng Yaojin, Qin Shubao, Yuqi Jingdai, Zhu Rengui, and others stepped forward also. They advanced together, bowed low before the white jade steps, and asked in a memorial, "Why did it take your majesty so long to awake from your dream the other day?" To this, Taizong replied, "The other day we took Wei Zheng's letter and felt our soul leaving the place. The horsemen of the Imperial Guard asked us to go hunting with them, and as we were going along, the men and their horses all vanished. His late Majesty and our dead brothers appeared and started to shout at us in a quarrelsome way. Things were getting very awkward when we saw a man in a black hat and gown who turned out to be the Judge Kui Zhu. When he had shouted at my dead brothers and driven them away, we gave him Wei Zheng's letter. As he was reading it, some servants in black holding banners let us in and took us to the Senluo Palace, where the 10 kings of hell were all sitting. They said that the dragon of the river Xing had falsely accused us of deliberately killing him after we had promised to save him, so we gave them a full account of what we'd told you before. They said that the case had now been settled between the 3 orders, and ordered that the registers of birth and death be brought at once, so that they could see how long we were due to live. Judge Kui handed up the register, and they saw in it that we were due to reign for 33 years, which meant that we had another 20 years of life in front of us. They told Marshal Zhu and Judge Kui to escort us back. We took our leaves of the 10 kings and promised to send them some pumpkins and fruit as a mark of our thanks. After leaving the Senluo Palace, we saw in the underworld how the disloyal, the unfilial, those who do not observe the rules of propriety, wasters of food grains, bullies, cheats, those who use false measures, adulterers, robbers, hypocrites, deceivers, debauchees, swindlers, and the like, undergo the agonies of being ground, burnt, pounded, and sliced, and suffer the torments of being fried, boiled, hung in midair, and skinned. There were tens of thousands of them, far more than our eyes could take in. Then we went through the city of the unjustly slain, where there were countless ghosts of the wrongly killed, and all of them the chieftains of the 64 groups of rebels and the spirits of the 72 bands of rebels blocking our way. Luckily, Judge Kui acted as our guarantor and lent us one of the hoards of gold and silver of a Mr. Ziang of Henan, with which we were able to buy them off and continue on our way. Judge Kui told us that when we returned to the world of the living, we had an inescapable obligation to hold a great mass to enable all those forlorn ghosts to be reborn. And with these instructions, he took his leave. When I came out under the wheel of the 6 paths of being, Marshal Zhu invited us to mount a horse. This horse seemed to fly to the banks of the river Wei, where I saw a pair of fish sporting in the water. Just as we were enjoying this sight, the marshal grabbed our legs and tipped us into the water, and with that we returned to life. When the ministers had heard this, they all congratulated him, and they compiled a record of it. And all the prefectures and counties of the empire sent in memorials of felicitation. Taizong issued a decree of amnesty for all the convicted criminals in the empire, and ordered inquiries into the cases of all those held in jail on serious charges. The inspectors submitted to the throne the names of more than 400 criminals who had been sentenced by the Ministry of Punishments to beheading or strangulation, and Taizong gave them a stay of execution, allowing them to go home to see their families and give their property to their relations. On the same day the following year, they were to report to the authorities for their sentences to be carried out. The criminals thanked him for his mercy and withdrew. He also issued a notice about charity for orphans, and released 3,000 women of all ages from the palace to be married to members of the army. From then on, all was well within and without the palace. There is a poem to prove it. Vast is the mercy of the great Tang Emperor. He surpasses Yao and Shun in making the people prosper. 400 condemned men all left their prisons. 3,000 mistreated women were released from the palace. All the officials of the empire proclaimed the monarch's long life. The ministers at court congratulate the great dragon. Heaven responds to the thoughts of the good heart. Its blessing will protect his 17 successors. When he had released the women from the palace and let the condemned men out of prison, he issued a notice that was posted throughout the empire. It read, "Great are heaven and earth. Sun and moon shine clearly. Although the universe is vast, earth and sky have no room for evil plots. If you use your wits and skill to cheat people, you will get retribution in this life. If you are good at giving and ask for little, you are sure to find a reward before your future life. 1,000 cunning plans cannot compare with living according to one's lot. 10,000 kinds of robbers are no match for those who live frugally and accept their fate. If you are good and merciful in thought and deed, what need is there to bother to read the scriptures? If your mind is full of malice towards others, to read the whole of the Buddha's canon would be a waste of time." From then on, everyone in the country did good deeds. Another notice was issued calling for a worthy man to take pumpkins to the underworld, and at the same time, Yuchi Jingde, the Duke of Yi, was sent to Kaifeng in Henan to visit Xiang Liang and pay him back a hoard of jewels and a hoard of gold and silver. Some days after the notice had been issued, a worthy man called Liu Quan from Junzhou came forward to deliver the pumpkins. He came from a family worth 10,000 strings of cash. When his wife, Li Qiuyan, had taken a gold pin from her hair to give as offering to a monk at the gate. Liu Quan had cursed her for being a loose wife who would not stay in the woman's quarters. Li Qiulian, bitterly resenting this, had hanged herself, leaving a little boy and girl who had been crying night and day ever since. Liu Quan, unable to bear it any longer, wanted only to end his own life and abandon his family and his children. For this reason, he had volunteered to deliver the pumpkins in death, and came to the Tang Emperor with the imperial notice in his hand. The emperor ordered him to go to the Golden Pavilion, where he was to put a pair of pumpkins on his head and some gold in his sleeve, and drink poison. Liu Quan drank the poison and died. In an instant his soul appeared at the Devil Gate with pumpkins on his head. The demon officer at the gate asked, "Who are you, and how did you come here?" "I have come on the orders of Emperor Taizong of the Great Tang to present some pumpkins to the 10 kings of hell." The officer was only too pleased to let him in, and he went straight to the Senluo Palace, and when he was given audience with the kings of hell, he presented the pumpkins to them and said, "I have brought these pumpkins a great distance in obedience to the decree of the Tang Emperor, who wishes to thank your majesties for their great mercy to him." "How splendid of the Tang Emperor to be as good as his word," exclaimed the 10 delighted kings as they accepted the pumpkins. Then they asked him what he was called and where he was from. "I am a commoner of the city of Junzhou," he replied, "and my name is Liu Quan. As my wife, Miss Li, hanged herself and left a boy and a girl with nobody to look after them, I wanted to abandon my family and children by giving my life for my country. So I brought this offering of pumpkins on behalf of my sovereign, who wanted to thank your majesties for his great mercy." On hearing this, the 10 kings ordered a search for Liu Quan's wife, Miss Li. The devil messengers soon brought her to the Senluo Palace, outside which Liu Quan was reunited with her. They thanked the 10 kings for their kindness and told them about the harsh words that had been spoken. On consulting the registers of birth and death, the kings found that they were fated to become immortals, so they ordered the demon officers to take them back at once. The demon officers, however, asked in a report, "As Li Qiulian has been dead for some time, her body has perished. So what is her soul to be attached to?" "Li Yuying, the sister of the Tang Emperor, is due to die a sudden death today," said the kings of hell, "so we can borrow her body to put Li Qiulian's soul back into." On receiving this order, the demon officers took Liu Quan and his wife out of the underworld to be brought back to life. If you don't know how they returned to life, listen to the explanation in the next installment. Chapter 12. The Tang Emperor keeps faith and holds a great mass. Guan Yin appears to the reincarnated Golden Cicada. When the devil officers left the underworld with Liu Quan and his wife, a dark and whirling wind blew them straight to the great capital, Chang'an, where Liu Quan's soul was sent to the Golden Pavilion, and Li Qiulian's to an inner courtyard of the palace, where Princess Yu Ying could be seen walking slowly beside some moss under the shade of some blossoming trees. Suddenly, the devil officers struck her full in the chest and knocked her over. They snatched her soul from her living body and put Li Qiulian's soul into the body in its place. With that, they returned to the underworld. When the palace serving women saw her drop dead, they rushed to the throne hall to report to the three empresses that Her Royal Highness the Princess had dropped dead. The shocked empresses passed the news on to Taizong, who sighed and said, "We can well believe it. When we asked the 10 lords of hell if young and old in our palace would all be well, they replied that they would all be well except that our younger sister was going to die suddenly." How true that was. He and everyone else in the palace went with great sorrow to look at her, lying under the trees, only to see that she was breathing very lightly. "Don't wail," the Tang Emperor said. "Don't wail. It might alarm her." Then he raised her head with his own hand and said, "Wake up, sister, wake up." All of a sudden, the princess sat up and called out, "Don't go so fast, husband. Wait for me." "Sister, we're waiting for you here," said the emperor. The princess lifted her head, opened her eyes, and looked at him. "Who are you?" she asked. "How dare you put your hands on us?" "It's your august brother, royal sister," replied Taizong. "I've got nothing to do with august brothers and royal sisters," said the princess. "My maiden name is Li, and my full name is Li Kulian. My husband is Liu Quan, and we both come from Junzhou. When I gave a gold hairpin to a monk at the gate 3 months ago, my husband said harsh words to me about leaving the women's quarters and not behaving as a good wife should. It made me so angry and upset that I hanged myself from a beam with a white silk sash, leaving a boy and a girl who cried all night and all day. As my husband was commissioned by the Tang Emperor to go to the underworld to deliver some pumpkins, the kings of hell took pity on us and let the two of us come back to life. He went ahead, but I lagged behind. When I tried to catch him, I tripped. You are all quite shameless to be mauling me like this. I don't even know your names." "We think that Her Royal Highness is delirious after passing out when she fell," said Taizong to the palace women. He sent an order to the medical academy for some medicinal potions and helped Yu Ying into the palace. When the Tang Emperor was back in his throne hall, one of his aides came rushing in to report, "Your Majesty, Liu Quan, the man who delivered the pumpkins, is awaiting your summons outside the palace gates." The startled Taizong immediately sent for Liu Quan, who prostrated himself before the vermilion steps of the throne. "What happened when you presented the pumpkins?" asked the Tang Emperor. "Your subject went straight to the Devil Gate with the pumpkins on my head. I was taken to the Senluo Palace, where I saw the 10 kings of hell, to whom I presented the pumpkins," explaining how very grateful my emperor was. The kings of hell were very pleased. They bowed in your Majesty's honor and said, "How splendid of the Tang Emperor to be as good as his word." "What did you see in the underworld?" asked the emperor. "I did not go very far there, so I did not see much. But when the kings asked me where I was from and what I was called, I told them all about how I had volunteered to leave my family and my children to deliver the pumpkins because my wife hanged herself. They immediately ordered demon officers to bring my wife, and we were reunited outside the Senluo Palace. Meanwhile, they inspected the registers of births and deaths, and saw that my wife and I were both due to become immortals, so they sent devil officers to bring us back. I went ahead with my wife, following behind, and although I was fortunate enough to come back to life, I don't know where her soul has been put." "What did the kings of hell say to you about your wife?" asked the astonished emperor. "They didn't say anything," replied Liu Quan. "But I heard a demon officer say, as Li Qilan has been dead for some time, her body has decomposed." To this, the kings of hell said, "Li Yuying of the Tang House is due to die today, so we can borrow her body to put Li Qilan's soul back into. As I don't know where this Tang House is or where she lives, I haven't been able to go and look for her yet." The Tang Emperor, who was now very pleased, said to his officials, "When we were leaving the kings of hell, we asked them about our family. They said all its members would be well, except for my sister. She collapsed and died under the shade of some blossoming trees. When we hurried over to support her, she came to, shouting, 'Don't go so fast, husband. Wait for me.' We thought at the time that she was just talking deliriously after passing out. But when we asked her to tell us more, her story tallied precisely with Liu Quan's. If Her Royal Highness died suddenly and came to shortly afterwards talking like this, then it means that Liu Quan's wife must have borrowed her body to come back to life," said Wei Jing. "Things like this do happen. The princess should be asked to come out so that we can hear what she says." "We have just ordered the Imperial Medical Academy to send some medicine, so we don't know whether it will be possible," said the Tang Emperor, who then sent a consort into the palace to ask her to come out. The princess, meanwhile, was shouting wildly inside the palace. "I'm taking none of your medicine. This isn't my home. My home is a simple tiled house, not like this jaundiced yellow palace with its flashy doors. Let me out! Let me out!" 4 of 5 women officials and 2 or 3 eunuchs appeared while she was shouting and helped her go straight to the throne hall, where the Tang Emperor asked, "Would you recognize your husband if you saw him?" "What a thing to ask! We've been married since we were children, and I've given him a son and a daughter, so of course I'd recognize him." The Emperor told his attendants to help her down, and she went down from the throne hall. As soon as she saw Liu Quan in front of the white jade steps, she seized hold of him. "Husband!" she exclaimed. "Where did you go? Why didn't you wait for me? I tripped over, and all these shameless people surrounded me and shouted at me. Wasn't that shocking?" Although Liu Quan could hear that his wife was talking, she looked like somebody else, so he did not dare to recognize her as his wife. "Indeed," said the Emperor. "Sometimes mountains collapse, and the earth yawns open. But few men will shorten their lives to die for another." As he was a good and wise monarch, he gave all of the princess's dressing cases, clothes, and jewelry to Liu Quan as if they were a dowry, presented him with an edict freeing him from labor service for life, and told him to take the princess home with him. Husband and wife thanked him before the steps and returned home very happily. There is a poem to prove it. "Life and death are preordained. Some have many years, others few. When Liu Quan came back to the light after taking the pumpkins, Li Qilan returned to life in a borrowed body." After leaving the emperor, the pair went straight back to the city of Junzhou, where they found that their household and their children were all well. There is no need to go into how the two of them publicized their virtue rewarded. The story turns to Lord Yuchi, who went to Kaifeng in Henan with a hoard of gold and silver for Xiang Liang, who made a living by selling water and dealing in black pots and earthenware vessels with his wife, whose maiden name was Zhang, at the gate of their house. When they made some money, they were content to keep enough for their daily expenses, giving the rest as alms to monks or using it to buy paper ingots of gold and silver, which they assigned to various hordes in the underworld and burnt. That was why they were now to be so well rewarded. Although he was only a pious pauper in this world, he owned mountains of jade and gold in the other one. When Lord Yuchi brought them the gold and silver, Mr. and Mrs. Jiang were terrified out of their wits. Apart from his lordship, there were also officials from the local government office, and horses and carriages were packed tight outside their humble cottage. The two of them fell to their knees dumbfounded and began to kowtow. "Please rise," said Lord Yuchi. "Although I am merely an imperial commissioner, I bring gold and silver from His Majesty to return to you." Shivering and shaking, Xiang Liang replied, "I've lent out no silver or gold, so how could I dare to accept this mysterious wealth?" "I know that you were a poor man," said Lord Yuchi, "but you have given monks everything they need, and bought paper ingots of gold and silver, which you have assigned to the underworld and burnt, thus accumulating large sums of money down there. When His Majesty and Emperor Taizong was dead for 3 days before returning to life, he borrowed one of your hoards of gold and silver down there, which he is now repaying to you in full. Please check it through so that I can go back and report that I have carried out my instructions." Xiang Liang and his wife just went on bowing to heaven and refused to take the gold and silver. If humble folk like ourselves took all this gold and silver, it'd soon be the death of us. Although we have burned some paper and assigned it to various stores, it was a secret. Anyhow, what proof is there that His Majesty, may he live for 10,000 years, borrowed gold and silver down there? We refuse to accept it. The Emperor said that Judge Kui was his guarantor when he borrowed your money, and this can be verified, so please accept it," replied Lord Yuchi. "I would sooner die than do so," said Xiang Liang. Zhang Lang? Maybe, I'm not sure. Seeing how earnestly he refused Lord Yuchi, he had to send a man back with a detailed report to the throne. On reading this report that Xiang Liang had refused to accept the gold and silver, Taizong said, "He really is a pious old fellow." He sent orders to Yuchi Jingde that he was to build a temple in his name, erect a shrine to him, and invite monks to do good deeds on his behalf. This would be as good as paying him back the gold and silver. On the day this decree reached him, Yuchi Jingde turned towards the palace to thank the emperor and read it aloud for all to hear. Then he bought 50 mu of land at a place inside the city that would not be in the way from either the civil or the military point of view. And here work was begun on a monastery to be called the imperially founded Ziangguo Monastery. To its left was erected a shrine to Mr. and Mrs. Xiang. with an inscribed tablet that read, "Built under the supervision of Lord Yuchi." This is the present great Jiangguo Monastery. When he was informed that work had been completed, Taizong was very pleased, and, assembling the multitude of officials, he issued a notice summoning monks to come and hold a great mass for the rebirth of those lonely souls in the underworld. As the notice traveled throughout the empire, the local officials everywhere recommended holy and venerable monks to go to Chang'an for the service. By the end of the month, many monks had arrived in Chang'an from all over the empire. The emperor issued a decree ordering Fu Yi, the deputy analyst, to select some venerable monks to perform Buddhist ceremonies. On hearing this command, Fu Yi sent up a memorial requesting a ban on the building of pagodas and saying that there was no Buddha. It read, "By the law of the West, there are no distinctions between ruler and subject or between father and son. The 3 paths and the 6 roads are used to deceive the foolish. Past sins are chased away to filch future blessings. And Sanskrit prayers are recited in attempts to avoid retribution. Now birth, death, and the length of life are in fact decided by nature, and punishments, virtue, power, and blessings come from the Lord of men. But these days vulgar believers distort the truth and say that they all come from Buddha. In the time of the 5 emperors and 3 kings of antiquity, this Buddha did not exist. Yet rulers were enlightened, subjects were loyal, and prosperity lasted for many a long year. When foreign gods were first established in the time of Emperor Ming of the Han Dynasty, Sramanas from the West began to propagate their religion. This, in reality, a foreign encroachment on China, and it does not merit belief. When he had heard this read to him, Taizong tossed it to his other officials for debate. The minister, Xiao Yu, stepped forward from the ranks, kowtowed, and said, "The Buddha's law has flourished for several dynasties, and by spreading good and preventing evil, it gives unseen help to the state. There is no reason why it would be abolished. Buddha was a sage. Those who deny sages are lawless. I request that he be severely punished." Fu Yi argued with Xiao Yu, pointing out that correct behavior was derived from serving one's parents and one's sovereign, whereas the Buddha turned his back on his parents, resisting the Son of Heaven, although he was but a commissioner, and rebelling against his mother and father with the body that they gave him. Xiao Yu had not been born in an empty mulberry tree, but he honored a religion that denied fathers. This indeed proved that he who had no sense of filial piety denied his father. All Xiao Yu did was to put his hands together and say, "Hell must have been made for men such as him." Taizong sent for the High Chamberlain, Zhang Diaoyuan, and the head of the Secretariat, Zhang Shihang, to ask them how effectively Buddhist ritual obtained blessings. The Buddha dwells in purity, benevolence, and mercy, the 2 officers replied. And the true result is Buddha emptiness. Emperor Wu of the northern Zhao dynasty placed the 3 teachings in an order. The Chan master Da Hui wrote a poem in praise of the distant and mysterious. If the masses support monks, anything can happen. The five patriarchs came down to their mothers' wombs, and the Bodhidharma appeared. From remotest antiquity, everyone has said that the three teachings are highly venerable and cannot be destroyed or abolished. We humbly beg your majesty to give us his preceptive ruling. Your submission makes sense, said the delighted Taizong. If anyone else makes further comments, he will be punished. He then ordered Wei Zheng, Xiao Yu, and Zhang Daoyuan to invite all the monks and select one of great virtue to be master of ceremonies. They all bowed to him to thank him and withdrew. From then on, there was a new law. Anyone who injured a monk or slandered the Buddha would lose an arm. The next day, the three court officials assembled all the monks at the altar among rivers and hills, and they went through them all one by one. From among them, they chose a venerable and virtuous monk. Do you know who he was? Fully versed in the basic mystery, his title was Golden Cicada. But because he did not want to hear the Buddha preach, he transferred to the mortal world to suffer torment, was born among the common mortals to fall into the net. From the moment he entered the womb, he met with evil. Before he left it, he encountered a gang of villains. His father was top graduate Chen from Haizhou. His grandfather, a senior imperial commander. His birth offended the meteor that dropped into the water. He drifted with the current and followed the waves. Jinshan Island had a great destiny. The abbot Qianan brought him up. Only at 17 did he meet his mother and go to the capital to find his grandfather. Commander Yin Kaishan, raising a great army, wiped out and punished the bandits at Hongzhou. Graduate Xin Wangri escaped from the heavenly net, and father and son were happily reunited. Accepting the invitation, he receives once more the monarch's grace, and his fame is spread as he climbs the lofty tower. Refusing to take office, he wants to be a monk. So as Sramana of the Hongfu temple, he learns about the way, the child of an ancient Buddha, who used to be called Zhang Liu, and took the Dharma name of Shin Xuanzang. That day the Reverend Xuanzang was chosen from among all the monks. He had been a monk from infancy, and ever since birth he had eaten vegetarian food and observed the prohibitions. His maternal grandfather was an imperial commander, Yin Kaishan. His father, Qin Wangri, had come top in the palace examination and had been appointed a grand secretary in the imperial library. Xuanzang, however, had no interest in honor and glory, and his only joy was to cultivate nirvana. Investigation revealed that his origins were good, and his virtue great. Of the 1,000 sutras and 10,000 holy books, there was not a single one that he did not know. He could sing every Buddhist chant, and knew all the religious music. The three officials took him to the imperial presence, where they danced and stirred up the dust. When they had bowed, they reported, "Your subject, Jiao Yu, and the rest of us have chosen a venerable monk called Qin Xuanzang, in obedience to the imperial decree." On hearing his name, Taizong thought deeply for a long time, and then asked, "Is that the Xuanzang who is the son of Grand Secretary Qin Wangri?" "Your subject is he," replied Xuanzang, with a kowtow. "Then you were indeed well chosen," said the emperor with satisfaction. "You are indeed a monk of virtuous conduct, and a mind devoted to meditation. I give you the offices of left controller of the clergy, right controller of the clergy, and hierarch of the empire." Xuanzang kowtowed to express his thanks and accepted the appointments. The emperor then gave him a multicolored golden cassock and a Vairocana mitre, telling him to be sure he conscientiously continued to visit enlightened monks, and giving him the position at the top of the hierarchy. He gave him a decree in writing, ordering him to go to the Huasheng temple to pick up a propitious day and hour on which to begin the recitations of the scriptures. Xuanzang bowed, took the decree, and went to the Huasheng temple, where he assembled many monks, had meditation benches made, prepared for the mass, and chose the music. He selected a total of 1,200 high and humble monks of enlightenment, who he divided into an upper, a middle, and a lower hall. All the holy objects were neatly arranged before all the Buddhas. The 3rd day of the 9th month of that year was chosen an auspicious day on which to start the 7 times 7 days of the great land and water mass. This was all reported to the throne, and at the appointed time, Taizong, the high civil and military officials, and the royal family went to the service to burn incense and listen to the preaching. There is a poem to prove it that goes, "At the Dragon Assembly, in the 13th year of Jin Guan, the emperor called a great meeting to talk about the scriptures. At the assembly they began to expound the unfathomable law, while clouds glowed above the great shrine. The emperor, in his grace, orders the building of a temple. The golden cicada sheds his skin to edify the west. He spreads the news that rewards for goodness save from ill, preaching the doctrine of the three Buddhas of past and future. In the year GC, the 13th of Jin Guan, on the day Jiaxu, the third of the 9th month, the hierarch Qin Xuanzang assembled 1,200 venerable monks at the Huansheng Temple in the city of Chang'an for a chanting of all the holy scriptures. After the morning court was over, the emperor left the throne hall in his dragon and phoenix chariot at the head of a host of civil and military officials and went to the temple to burn incense. What did the imperial chariot look like? Indeed, propitious vapors filled the sky that shone with 10,000 beams of sacred light. A mellow breeze blew softly. The sunlight was strangely beautiful. 1,000 officials with jade at their belts walked in due order. The banners of 5 guards are drawn up on either side. Holding golden gourds, wielding battle axes, they stand in pairs. Lamps of purple gauze, imperial censers, make majestic clouds. Dragons fly and phoenixes dance. Ospreys and eagles soar. True is the enlightened Son of Heaven. Good are his just and loyal ministers. This age of prosperity surpasses the time of Shun and Yu. The eternal peace he has given outdoes that of Yao and Tang. Under a parasol with curved handle, the dragon robe sweeps in, dazzling bright. Interlocking jade rings, colored phoenix fans, shimmer with a magic glow. Pearl crowns on belts of jade, gold seals on purple cords. 1,000 regiments of soldiers protect the imperial chariot. 2 lines of generals carry the royal chair. Bathed and reverent, the emperor comes to worship the Buddha, submitting to the true achievement as he joyfully burns incense. When the carriage of the Tang emperor reached the temple, orders were given to stop the music as he descended from the vehicle and went at the head of his officials to bow to the Buddha and burn incense. When he had done this 3 times, he looked up and saw what a magnificent assembly it was. Dancing banners, flying canopies. When the banners danced, the sky shook with clouds of silk. When the canopies flew, the sun gleamed as the red lightning flashed. Perfect the image of the statue of the honored one, mighty the grandeur of the art's countenances. Magic flowers in a vase, censers burning sandalwood and lacquer. As the fairy flowers stand in vases, trees like brocade fill the temple with their brightness. As the censers burn sandalwood and lacquer, clouds of incense rise to the azure heaven. Fresh fruit of the season is piled in vermilion dishes. Exotic sweets are heaped on the silk-covered tables. Serried ranks of holy monks intone the surahs to save abandoned souls from suffering. Taizong and his civil and military officials all burned incense, bowed to the golden body of the Lord Buddha, and paid their respects to the arts. The hierarch Qin Xuanzang then led all the monks to bow to the emperor, and when this was over, they divided into their groups and went to their meditation places, while the hierarch showed the emperor the notice about the delivery of the lonely ghosts. It read, "Mysterious is the ultimate virtue, and the sect of meditation leads to nirvana. The purity of the truth is all-knowing. It pervades the three regions of the universe. Through its countless changes, it controls the negative and positive. Unbounded are the embodiments of the eternal reality. In considering those forlorn ghosts, one should be deeply distressed. At the sacred command of Taizong, we have assembled some chosen monks for meditation and preaching. He has opened wide the gates of enlightenment and rowed far the boat of mercy, saving all the beings in the sea of suffering and delivering those who had long been afflicted by the 6 ways of existence. They will be led back to the right road and revel in the great chaos. In action and in passivity, they will be at one with primal simplicity. For this wonderful cause, they are invited to see the purple gates of the pure capital, and through our assembly, they will escape from the confines of hell to climb to the world of bliss and be free, wandering as they please in the paradise of the West." As the poem goes, a burner of incense of longevity, a few spells to achieve rebirth. The infinite law is proclaimed. The boundless mercy of heaven is shown. When all sins are washed away, the neglected souls leave hell. We pray to protect our country. May it stay at peace and be blessed. When he had read this, the Tang Emperor's heart was filled with happiness, and he said to the monks, "Hold firm to your sincerity, and never allow yourselves a moment's slackness in the service of the Buddha. Later on, when the assembly is over, you will be blessed, and we shall richly reward you. You shall certainly not have labored in vain." The 1,200 monks all kowtowed to him to thank him. When the 3 vegetarian meals for the day were over, the Tang Emperor went back to the palace. He was invited to come back to the Grand Assembly to burn incense once more on the 7th day. As evening was now drawing in, all the officials went away. It was a fine evening. A light glow suffused the boundless sky. A few crows were late in finding their roosts. Lamps were lit throughout the city as all fell still. It was just the hour for the monks to enter the trance. We will omit a description of the night, or of how the monks intoned the scriptures when their master took his seat again the next morning. The Bodhisattva Guanyin from Podoraka Island in the southern sea had been long in Chang'an, looking on the Buddha's orders for the man to fetch the scriptures, but she had not yet found anyone really virtuous. Then she heard that Taizong was propagating the true achievement and selecting venerable monks for a grand assembly. And when she saw that the master of ceremonies was the monk Jiang Liu, who was really a Buddha's son, came down from the realms of supreme bliss, an elder whom she herself had led into his earthly mother's womb, she was very pleased. She took her disciple Moxa and the treasures that the Buddha had given her out on the street to offer them for sale. Do you know what these treasures were? There was a precious brocade cassock, and a monastic staff with 9 rings. She also had those 3 golden bands, but she put them away safely for future use. She was only selling the cassock and the staff. There was a monk in Chang'an City too stupid to be chosen for the service, but who, nonetheless, had some ill-gotten banknotes. When he saw the bald, scabby, barefoot figure wearing a tattered robe, the form the Bodhisattva had taken,